Each vote must have the same value anywhere in the country because we are all equal citizens of India. The second equally important point is that since India is a union of states, it's not a federation. The states do not have any sovereignty at all. Unlike what the Congress people and Mr. Rahul Gandhi say, he doesn't know the meaning of the word union. When Ambedkar, clearly his beloved Baba Saheb, has clearly pointed out the difference between the word union and the word federation, and why the word federation doesn't come in our constitution at all. Article 3, which gives the parliament the power to form the boundaries of states, was given in that simple way because they knew very well that the boundaries of the states as they existed in 47 were purely temporary. Since the union is so important here, since the central government is so important compared to the state governments controlling all economic, political, all powers it has, therefore, the bargaining position or the reputation of every state with regards to the union had to be the same. Today, if Goa and UP go there to the center, the Chief Minister of Goa and the Chief Minister of UP go with some demands. They will listen more carefully to the Chief Minister of UP. The union should look at each state equally. When will that happen? It will happen if and only if the population of each state is the same.
Ladies and gentlemen, Namaste and welcome to Sangam Talks. This is the Bangalore chapter of Sangam Talks, and this is also going to be the inaugural edition of Sangam Samvada. This is the second edition that we are producing out here, and very soon we'll be back with Sangam Talks in Kannada entitled Sangam Samvada with many interesting personalities. My name is Venkatesh, and I'm very happy to welcome Professor Desiraju back again into our program. This is a second talk in continuation of what he spoke with us in his previous talks. There we covered things about India as a civilizational state and the civilizational issues facing India. Here we are actually talking about a more specific issue, which is concerning every electoral democracy, which is about the delimitation and the reorganization of states. In his book, Bharat, India 2.0, Professor Desiraju has addressed the issue of why India is a civilizational state and not a constitutional state, and how the constitution does not necessarily reflect the values of a civilization. And he's addressed the issues that arise from the conflict between these two paradigms. Continuing on this same thesis, he is now going to write another book, and which is going to be released in the new year. And it's addressing a core issue of electoral democracy, which is about delimitation and its impact. And this book also argues that we are better served for our governance purposes by dividing India into much smaller and a larger number of states.
Thank you, Venkatesh, for this nice introduction. And indeed, in my 2022 book, Bharat India 2.0, I had argued for the creation of a larger number of states within the Union of India. Right now we have 28 and about 8 union territories. And I had argued for the formation of about 75 states within the same political boundary. And obviously, the states would be smaller in size. Now, many people, since the book was published, have asked for the reasons why I had argued in this way. And wasn't the present system of 28 states good enough for our country? Because we've been managing with this one way or the other for 75 years. The book on delimitation, which will come out probably in late December or at the latest early January. I just saw the possible cover illustrations yesterday. So it is in the final stages, what the Americans would call home run stretch. is called Delimitation and States Reorganization. Better Democracy for Bharat. That is the title of the book. And it is a slim volume. And for those of you who have read Bharat India 2.0, let me tell you, it is not as heavy a reading as Bharat was. Although people have told me that Bharat is easy to understand, delimitation will be even easier to understand. It is quite simply, if I would paraphrase, a problem of arithmetic rather than politics or economics or anything else. So, Venkatesh, if I could take a few minutes.
Yes, sir.
And try to elucidate what we mean by delimitation. And why, as you said, it is a feature of all electoral democracies, of which India is obviously one. Now, to go back a little, democracy itself means that the people are free to choose their own leaders. Almost meaning the same is the word republic, which means governance by a group of people. Republic in itself doesn't necessarily have anything to do with elections. Democracy has everything to do with elections. Republic simply means rule by a group of people. So you can have republics that are not democracies, like China, because China is ruled by a group of people. Now, many democracies, however, are republics, like India. We are ruled by a group of people, but we elect them in a free and fair election. So these are what are called democratic republics, and there are a large number. I don't know, maybe 50, 60 are like this in the whole world today, as opposed to, say, monarchies and dictatorships and things like that. So coming back again to democracy, it means that every democracy has some form of election. So we elect people, and then they sit in parliament or in the assemblies, and they rule on our behalf, really. When we elect somebody and put them there, they are ruling on our behalf. It is the wishes of the people that are carried out by our elected representatives.
Yes.
Which is why, when they come back for re-election after 5 years, they say, this is what we promised you, and you voted us on this basis. And this is what we have done. So please vote for us again. And it is the duty of the opposition parties to say that, well, these guys promised you all these things, but they didn't deliver on their promises. So please throw them out and vote us instead, and this is what we will do. So this is how elections by and large proceed in India. Today's Maharashtra election and the result which has come out today also shows the same trend. People were by and large happy with the existing Mahayuti government in Maharashtra, so they have voted them back with an increased majority, actually, which means that they feel that they are expecting something out of this Mahayuti, and that is why they voted in that following manner. So far, so good. Now, another cardinal principle of any democracy, which seems very natural and obvious to anybody. You don't need to be even sort of college graduate or even high school to understand this. That the value of each vote in a democracy must be the same for every citizen of the country.
Essentially, the right of equality.
Article 14 of our Constitution says just that. It says that the state shall treat all citizens the same, isn't it? So when I go and vote in Bangalore, or somebody else goes and votes in Bodinayakanur, or somebody else goes and votes in Bareilly, the value of that vote in terms of being able to elect a member to the Lok Sabha should be exactly the same. My vote should not be worth less than the fellow in Bodinayakanur. So this sounds almost obvious, isn't it? But yet what happens in all democracies or in all countries is that even if you start like this, like I'll say, a state with a population X elects so many Y members to the Lok Sabha. It will be a certain proportion. And that proportion will be kept in all the states in the country. That is, in the beginning, that's how it is. What happens after some time is that the population growth in the various states starts becoming different.
Divergence of population.
The rate of population growth starts becoming different. Some places, maybe people don't live there anymore, so they come out. This sort of rural to urban migration.
Okay.
So many reasons. The population increases at different rates in different parts of the country. Now, when this happens, the value of each vote in a particular place starts becoming different. If you do not change the number of seats in the parliament or assembly. Like suppose I have a population of 100 and then I elect 2 people out of the 100 to sit in parliament. Now, suppose for some reason that population goes to 150 and I'm still electing only 2 people.
And this also is the fact that different parts of the country.
Yes, somebody else will go to 170, somebody will be 130. And then I don't change the number of seats. If suppose 100 to 150, 2 should become 3. In terms of 2 for 100, so it will be 3 for 150.
If we were to take a concrete example, if there were constituencies A and B, and they started with roughly the same number of voters, at some point of time, the divergence happens. So how does this process work in our democracy, and what is the constitutional mechanism that's there in our constitution to deal with this?
Yes. We will take a real life example. To find out the number of people, you need census. Okay. And census in our country is normally held every 10 years. In the year ending with 1. So 1961, 1971, 1981, like that. And the last census that was held was 2011. In 2021, we could not hold a census because of COVID. So, a census is now badly overdue. They have said now that they are going to have the census next year. And normally to do the full census takes a full 2 years. So by the end of 26, the census should be over. Now, we need a census to know the number of people. But for the matter of delimitation, we should look at the population increases. 4 states I will take.
Okay.
Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. Let us start with the 1971 year as a base year for population.
This is the current delimitation is based on that as the census?
I'm still coming to delimitation. Before I come to delimitation, which was frozen in 1976, suppose you take the population growth of these 4 states between 1971 and 2011. So 71, 81, 91, 2001, 2011, 40 years.
Yes.
In these 40 years, by what percentage did these population of these 4 states grow? The numbers are as follows. Bihar is 240%.
Okay.
So if there were 100 people in Bihar in 71, there are 240 people in 2011. Uttar Pradesh is 227. Bihar 240, UP 227, Karnataka 210,
Okay.
210, Tamil Nadu 175. 240, 227, 220, 175.
There's a large differential.
There is quite a large differential. Further, because the number of seats per population was roughly equal for these four states in 1971. Till 1971, they used to go on adjusting the number of seats per state to keep up with these small changes in population.
Can I interrupt you for a minute out here?
Of course.
Is the census and delimitation happening at the same frequency?
Yes, it must. And in any functioning democracy, whether it is USA, UK, France, Germany, etc., it happens a short while after the census. So usually when they know the number of people, then they know the changes. And usually if you do it frequently, the changes in what do you mean by delimitation? Delimitation means changing the boundaries of the constituencies. So you will remove a few villages or a few districts or a few talukas here and there. You will adjust the limits so that the ratio of people elected to the population remains roughly the same all the time.
The question arises is what happened in 1975 that we always go back to 1975.
Correct.
And we don't, naturally one would assume that you would have another delimitation in the 1980s, 90s and so on.
Right? A very good question. Because till 71 the delimitation was going on properly. And it was not an issue at all because it was happening almost automatically. Small changes are required, that's all. It's a kind of a tinkering to do it. In 1975 the 70s in general was a period of considerable political turmoil in India.
Emergency.
Even prior to the emergency. Don't forget that by 1969, when the threat to Mrs. Gandhi's government came, she split the Congress. 1967 was the first time when a number of non-Congress parties assumed power in the state assemblies. The so-called Samyukta Vidayak Dal of Karpuri Thakur and the beginning of caste politics, for example.
In the Ganga belt.
Mostly in that area. It started. And there was the controversial presidential election between Sanjeev Reddy and V.V. Giri, voting according to your conscience. So, the 1971 general election, Mrs. Gandhi made it almost a sort of referendum on herself. And with that, she basically eliminated the old syndicate, or what used to be called Congress O.
It essentially became her own.
Became Congress I or Congi. So it then started bearing absolutely no relationship to the old Indian National Congress, which won us our freedom. So I view the Congress that won our freedom as completely different from the Congi of today.
So would you trace it back to mid 1970s as a
late 60s, early 70s is when I would say. And still Mrs. Gandhi felt a considerable amount of disquiet about her own political stability. And definitely regionalism was coming up. Don't forget it was 69 when the DMK came to power in Tamil Nadu. So the rise of regionalism can be really traced to the late 60s, early 70s. So this monolithic behemoth Congress running the whole country, those days gradually started getting over. So it was no more, the Congress had presence in the center, but certainly by and large not in some of the states in the peripheral areas.
But what actually happened in 1980s that led to the freezing of...
No, the delimitation freeze happened in 75. So what Mrs. Gandhi did was, she felt enough danger to her political position with the rise of the regional parties. And she felt that the limits of the constituencies as they were in 71 were suiting her political purpose.
That was advantageous to her.
It was highly advantageous to her. So, in the midst of that 42nd Amendment, with the height of the emergency, with all the opposition in jail, she froze the delimitation for 25 years. So, she said for 25 years, no constituency will change its boundaries.
So, did I get it right? It was an amendment passed during the emergency.
Absolutely.
That froze the delimitation for 25 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which would have happened as a matter of course every 10 years otherwise.
Even less than that. I think every 5 years. In fact, there was no particular time limit for these delimitations. They used to happen all the time. Even at the level of a by-election or something like this, it's a matter of, half a district going here, there. Because sometimes the population changes also were not very big,
But the question arises that why did the coalition, Janata coalition that, displaced Indira Gandhi briefly, why didn't they try to, take this out? And why was it?
This is a good question. They did not do many things which they could have done, probably because their time in office was so short. I think the whole trauma of the emergency and getting rid of Mrs. Gandhi and all that was a kind of a catharsis moment for the country. Because I remember I was at, shortly, it was after I came back from the US after my studies, that the whole Janata period was highly uncertain and settled. Even the Janata people were uncomfortable dealing with each other because they came together with the purpose of removing the emergency. They had done that. For example, it is often asked, why did they not remove the words secular and socialist, which Mrs. Gandhi put in the same 42nd Amendment in the bill? The answer to that is very simple. They had no objection to removing the word secular, but they did not want to remove the word socialist.
Everybody was a committed socialist.
Everybody was a committed socialist. And so what happened was, they feared questions that why are you removing only secular? So they didn't touch anything. And I would feel, it's okay, wisdom in hindsight. Probably they felt that since they had won the election, those constituency limits were still, and I don't think you can unfreeze a limit after the 25 years is set. I think it is something constitutional. Because it was set to go till 2001 and I think special majority or something is needed. It's not so easy to change that. Let us fast forward to 2001. 2001 was the Vajpayee government. They froze it again for another 25 years. And here the reason was different. They were in a shaky coalition. And it was not very clear. They were also dependent on regional parties. The regional parties want their own constituencies because each constituency has got a person who is elected from there, who has maintained a special interest in that area. So he wouldn't like to see this and that changing, especially if some caste composition or religious composition, if some small thing changes, then his electability itself comes to question. So for a purely electoral reason and a selfish short-term reason, none of the coalition partners were particularly keen on removing the delimitation, so it went on for another 25 years, which will get over in 2026, by which time the severe distortions in the population have taken place. So instead of solving this delimitation problem in several small doses, when none of us would have even felt that there is anything happening, after 50 years freeze, we see tremendous disparity in the number of people who are electing a single member to the Lok Sabha. Therefore, this whole principle of each vote same value now is practically meaningless.
Interesting that you refer to the Lok Sabha as a thing. Is it different when it comes to delimitation for legislative assembly seats within the state?
Not really. It is not really different, but the changes and distortions are much smaller.
Okay.
Because even here, there would be migration of population within the state. People do tend to move from rural areas to urban areas. So there are changes, but these are not as drastic as between state and state. And this is where the idea of delimitation is linked to the idea of smaller states, because the larger the state, the more will be these distortions. So, because a state is smaller than the union, the problem is less. Because the smaller state is smaller than the bigger state, it will be less if it is a smaller state. The distortions won't be so much. And as an example of this, we devote a special section, almost 1/3 of one of the chapters, on this whole delimitation issue in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. So this is a very, very special case and it requires special treatment. Probably we do not have enough time in this conversation because there are also areas of that state which we claim which are now in the illegal possession of Pakistan. So Gilgit, Baltistan, Chitral, all those things come.
Pakistan occupied Kashmir.
Pakistan occupied Kashmir basically. So even they have to be included in the delimitation exercise because all the political parties claim all those areas as an integral part of India. Nobody says, that those things are not an integral part of India. So this whole delimitation thing, as it has now arisen, as I said, is a matter of arithmetic. The fact that we have not been able to limit our constitutions in a proportionate way to the population, and as a result of which the value of a vote is different in different parts of the country, which is negating the basic feature of an electoral democracy. So for example, if for some reason, we do not know, for some political reason, if they freeze delimitation again for another 25 years, after 26, then I think we might as well say bye-bye to the idea that we are an electoral democracy. Then anybody, see today, there's some numbers we give. The value of a single vote in Kerala is 1.46 times the value of a single vote in Rajasthan. Which means 3 people in Rajasthan are equal to 2 people in Kerala. Okay, so states where the population has not increased rapidly, the votes in those states are worth more.
I'm going to ask you a slightly what if scenario. Okay, let's say partition hadn't happened and we would still be a united India and we followed the principle of delimitation. The regions that constitute Pakistan and Bangladesh today would have had a much higher rate of growth of population compared to the rest of India. And they would end up with more votes. So is the principle of one vote, one person, all that feasible for us civilizationally?
You've asked a brutally honest question.
And I'm referring to something else in India also.
And I commend you for the same. Within the political boundaries of India, the rate of population growth of Muslims is falling rapidly. It now stands just around 2. It was somewhere near 3.5 or something at the time of independence. So even in the Muslim community, and I do not hesitate to use the word Muslim, I use it quite freely because everybody today uses the word Muslim and the word Hindu. I think we have outgrown that stage where we say members of one community, members of another community, and all. We don't use that.
That is Akashwani speak.
That hypocrisy we don't use. I will say Muslims, Hindus and all. So if the Hindu population growth is a little bit less than 2, the Muslim rate of growth is 2. So within the boundaries of political India, I don't think it's a problem. Now, with those territories of what constitute today modern Pakistan and modern Bangladesh, it's very difficult to say, Venkatesh, what the fate of this country would have been had there been no partition. But let us not forget that at the time of the Simla Conference of 1946, Jinnah was actually proposing a kind of a weird kind of delimitation. When he talked about a federation.
Okay.
He said there would be a unified India, but there would be a federation of Muslim areas where only Muslims would vote. Nobody else could vote.
The Hindu minorities wouldn't
The
vote.
special electorates is what they call them. So he said that we would have like two countries within one country,
Mhm.
so that they would come together on certain matters like defense and currency or something like that. Of course, Sardar Patel and others ruled it out flat. They said that we better go our separate ways. And by then he had done that direct action day and all that. So it was clear that he was also not for it. But basically, the idea of delimitation of a very special type was also working in his mind. So the question is, many people argue today that it is better that we had partition, because otherwise today undivided India would be 40% Muslim. It was about 25% Muslim at the time of partition. They say that today it will be minimum 40% Muslim, and the transition to an Islamic state would be almost automatic. So it is a very weighty question. And the other thing is, which I will ask a weightier question to you, in the light of this problem that you have outlined, is the parliamentary democracy with first past the post, the Westminster system, is it the most suitable for us?
Okay. That's a fundamental question.
Because the whole business of this caste, today reservations for scheduled caste, scheduled tribes or OBCs has nothing to do with self-respect or social upliftment. It has everything to do with creating electoral vote banks. So it is only because of the electoral vote banks that all the political parties pay lip service to the constitution, they pay lip service to Ambedkar. But what they really want is to carve out their vote banks. Today's election in Maharashtra, and especially the 7 seats out of 9 in the Samajwadi strongholds in UP in the by-elections, that is a very significant development in my view, because it puts this argument as false, that you cannot divide people on caste and use them as vote banks and things like that. The whole business of delimitation, constituencies, elections will become much simpler if the election issues were things like development, progress, roads, science, education, disease, health, water. Suppose we could vote only on these matters, the progress towards better democracy for Bharat, which is a subtitle for my book, that would be much, much easier. Today we are asking, is he Kurmi? Is he Shia? Is he Nadar? Is he Vokaliga? See, these should not be questions that we ask at all. We should not, after 75 years of independence, we should not retrogress into this sort of a business. So, this idea of delimitation is one. First point, connected to census. Second, it must be done. And I know you will ask the next question, what will happen if we do this delimitation? Because the states with smaller population will suffer.
Fair enough. I actually would like you to address another question as well.
Please.
One, when we say that some states have had lesser growth of population, that's true. Some states have had more growth of population, that's true. But the real divide is between urbanized areas and non-urban areas also, to a large extent. Urbanized areas have a greater concentration of population with lesser growth of population intrinsically, while the rural areas have had concentration of population because of outer migration towards the cities, but a higher growth of population, which the excess they're exporting into the cities. And that's essentially what we are seeing. We're seeing Mumbai becoming a megapolis. Bangalore is 1.2 crores. Chennai is 1 crore. I'm saying 1 crore is a huge population for this thing. There's also urban-rural divide. So how do you see that also happening?
Well, this came to us in a very personal manner today.
Mm-hmm.
A short distance of about 8 kilometers from my home to the recording studio.
Oh, yeah.
That took me 1 hour, 20 minutes. And my son said, why is it that this whole Karnataka state has emptied itself into Bangalore?
Yeah.
If you just go outside a little bit, if you go to Ramnagara or Chennapatna, you will find almost nothing there. And why has Bangalore become like a monster city?
Yeah, we have 1/4 of almost.
So this is one of the issues I actually talk about in my earlier book, Bharat, India 2.0, is that if you have smaller states, and for example, in the state of Karnataka, I have proposed 7 small states.
Mhm.
I think one of the things that needs to be done to address the problem you have outlined immediately is to sustain the growth of Mysore, which still remains like a sort of backwater to Bangalore. Whereas Mysore has enough infrastructure, enough climate, and most important compared to Bangalore, enough water, to sustain a population of, say, twice or thrice the present population. Mysore really can be developed like a very modern smart city, avoiding some of the pitfalls and problems in Bangalore. Dharwad Hubli area definitely is one such thing which can form a nice nucleus in the northern part of Karnataka. Of course, I put 7 states. So all these little urban centers become the focal point of these small states. So I think that we have same problem in Chennai, as you say, Mumbai, Delhi, of course, monster, and to a smaller extent Kolkata. But Kolkata is not growing as fast as some of these other places. Hyderabad, compared to rural Telangana, it's definitely it's a frightening size.
Let's go back to the question that we left half addressed. The logic, I'm saying it's an age-old argument, you know it, I know it. Why are we being punished for controlling our population while why are they being rewarded for letting their population grow? That's the standard argument from the southern states.
Correct.
And what is the answer to that?
The answer to that, I hope, is presented in a simple manner in my book.
Mhm.
Now, the first principle which I have outlined so far is that each vote must have the same value anywhere in the country, because we are all equal citizens of India. The second equally important point is that since India is a union of states, it's not a federation, the states do not have any sovereignty at all. Unlike what the Congress people and Mr. Rahul Gandhi say, he doesn't know the meaning of the word union. When Ambedkar, clearly his beloved Baba Saheb, has clearly pointed out the difference between the word union and the word federation, and why the word federation doesn't come in our constitution at all. Those things that came together to form the Union of India did not come, in a sense, voluntarily. In fact, they had no existence when they came, because when the British left, there was something called British India. There was something called princely states. All these things, of which the place where we are sitting was part of one of those prominent princely states, Old Mysore State. Now, all these things were amalgamated, and Article 3, which gives the Parliament the power to form the boundaries of states, was given in that simple way because they knew very well that the boundaries of the states as they existed in 47 were purely temporary. Let me read, because this is important, extract from the States Reorganization Committee report of 1955, which was chaired by the great constitutional expert and administrator K.M. Panikkar. Panikkar summarizes, the existing structure of the states of the Indian Union is partly the result of
Historical accident,
and the circumstances attending the growth of the British power in India, and partly a byproduct of the historical process of the integration of former Indian states. So on the one hand, there was British India, which was about 2/3 the area, and the princely states about 1/3. The division of India during the British period into British provinces and Indian states was itself fortuitous and had no basis in Indian history. So those state boundaries, even in 47 or even in 55, were completely artificial and they had no basis in anything. which is why some states became very big and some states were very small. And coming back to the issue which you said, that a small state which controlled its population is now going to get penalized. This is why, and I think this is the crucial aspect which must be written in any book. Today, many books are written, but the books, they may be scholarly, they may have a lot of facts and information, but there is no novelty. There is no new idea expressed in most of these books. And we scientists are especially sensitive to this. Because in science, speaking the truth is not enough. It has to be true and it also has to be novel. If you are not saying something new, there is no point saying it. So the new thing which I mentioned, and I have a co-author here, Dikit Bhattacharya, so I should properly say we, what we mention in this delimitation book is that in order to solve precisely this problem which you said, some states will get penalized. Tomorrow if we just, I heard Mr. What is his name, that BJP leader, Annamalai. Annamalai said that, we all know that there are 888 seats in the new Lok Sabha. So presumably our 543 or 544 seats which we have now will become 888 in the new Lok Sabha after delimitation. He says that we will take the number of seats in the present and multiply it by 1.8 to get the new number. But he doesn't realize that by doing that you are not solving this problem. The one vote, each vote having the same value, it's as unequal if you just multiply everything by a factor of 1.8. You will just have more of those MPs, that's all. But you will not address this problem. On the other hand, your problem, which says that if you do a proper delimitation, then the states with less population will suffer. Definitely they will suffer. This is why the second criterion, we are a union of states. Because we are a union of states and the constitution is strongly weighed in favor of the center. This Ambedkar even said. He said that any constitution generally tends to gravitate power into the center. It never goes spontaneously to the states. So since the union is so important here, since the central government is so important compared to the state governments controlling all economic, political, all powers it has. Therefore, the bargaining position or the reputation of every state with regards to the union had to be the same. Today, if Goa and UP go there to the center, the Chief Minister of Goa and the Chief Minister of UP go with some demands, they will listen more carefully to the Chief Minister of UP.
Yeah, he tilts the balance in Lok Sabha.
Sure, yes, correct. So therefore, what we call, this word we use in the book is heft. Same state, every state equal heft. Every state must have the same bargaining power or appealing power to the union, and the union should look at each state equally. When will that happen? It will happen if and only if the population of each state is the same.
Now, there is something that comes out of this. It's a highly emotional issue. For example, in Karnataka, it is something you contrary to what people just found out. There is a lot of emotional attachment to the language among the Kannadigas, as much as the Tamilians do, though we don't get the same credit otherwise. Now, there is also a long history behind it, and since you are from Mysore, you probably understand that much better in terms of how the Karnataka reunification, as it's called, it was a long struggle itself. Now, when Andhra was broken into Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, it was an ugly scene in the parliament. There was a lot of emotional baggage. There's a lot of issues created and all of that. And there's a lot of gut reaction in Karnataka. For example, when you say that, let's break that into 4 states. And there is a genuine fear that we will lose our identity and linguistic identity.
No, I got your question. This is a common question. And My simple answer is buy my book. Because we devote a whole chapter to linguistic states. And contrary to public opinion, the idea of linguistic states is not old. It is purely a creation of the British after 1900. And we trace the importance of linguistic states to the desperate need of people to get government jobs. Because India was so poor around 1900, the British had sucked everything out of this country. The only way of even earning a living was to get a government job.
Government job.
Government job. Sarkari Naukri. So the government job was, the files and everything was done in the language that the British defined. So for example, where this whole thing started, many people do not know, and we have explained it in great detail. The whole fight for linguistic states started with Orissa. I don't think many people know this at all.
Many people would trace it to Andhra Pradesh as the first one.
No. Andhra Pradesh was almost the last. In fact, we call Andhra Pradesh, the subtitle we have given for Andhra is Après moi, which in French means after you. Andhra almost came last. Let me tell you the problem with Orissa. There was a huge presidency called Bengal Presidency, which included modern day West Bengal, modern day Bangladesh, all of Assam and the Northeast, Bihar, and Orissa. This was the Bengal Presidency, which was the biggest and largest and most powerful of the three presidencies.
And the oldest too.
Also the oldest. Chalo. The official language designated by the British for local administration in this was Bengali. So you had Bengalis who were running around in all these places holding petty government jobs. Now, if you look historically, Odisha is a far more ancient state than Bengal ever was.
Yes. And with a...
It goes back. Kalinga. It goes way, way back. And there were very fierce warriors. The Muslims were scared to invade Orissa at many times in the history. Okay, so here were a fierce, martial and proud people who were chafing all the time. And we have recorded certain documents and things where they talk about ignorant and tyrannical Bengali administrators who come here and try to kill us. The British were the ones who realized in this divide and rule that they can use language as a way of dividing Indians, because they were always interested in dividing Indians. Okay. So they had an ill-fated partition of Bengal in 1905, Lord Curzon. We talk about all this. And thanks to a huge outcry among all the people, this was removed in 1911.
But ironically, the same thing happened during the partition.
Well, that is a side point. But in the process of reuniting Bengal, they separated Bihar, Orissa and Assam and made them linguistic states, so that the Sarkari Naukri was now available to the Odiyas.
Locals.
And so therefore, the same story was repeated in Karnataka. I don't for a moment, it is hogwash to say that the Kannada language unites all of us. Ambedkar said very correctly, as I said, if people were to only listen to Ambedkar carefully, he said, one language, one state. He said all the people in a state should speak the same language. He's correct. But one state, one language is absolutely wrong, he said. So he said, and anyway, Kannada language has spread all over. There are temple inscriptions in Kashi and all written in Kannada. This is not something that is, it is something that was discovered yesterday. And poor people only cling to language because that's the only thing they can cling to. They have nothing else. A place which is economically wealthy, today if you go to Bombay, the Shiv Sena, which talked so much about Marathi Manus, has been thrown out. People want to get ahead. They want to move economically. As you said, the people coming to the urban areas. Okay, language is a matter of convenience. I am speaking to you in English because there are certain concepts that we need to speak in English. Otherwise, Kannadadalli matadbodu. But the conversation will not go to the seriousness and depth to which it might have to go because of my inexperience with the language.
And the wider audience
and the wider audience that means easily matadbodu. There is no problem. So language something is a small emotional matter in the heart. When we are able to come to an agreement with Pakistan on the Indus waters, why are Karnataka and Tamil Nadu not able to come to an agreement on Kaveri?
Oh, that's an interesting
It has
question.
been reduced to a matter of Tamil is older, Kannada is more pure. I have heard somebody saying the waters of the Kaveri are pure only when they are in Karnataka. ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ ಸರ್ ಈ ತರ. They talk all these things. And so this linguistic states, purely British creation. The other thing, which is what actually, since you mentioned, a bit of nostalgia, I got the idea of the Bharat book because the Telugus were the ones who wanted to come out of Madras presidency. Same problem, Sarkari Naukri.
Absolutely.
They were not getting the jobs and the Tamilian speaking people were getting. And even in Mysore, Tamil Brahmins were coming and occupying all the government posts in Mysore. So Maharaja formed a commission with Visvesvaraya and others as the chairman. And that's when they started this Mysore for Kannada and this kind of thing. More an attempt to keep Tamil Brahmins out.
It was actually Mysore for Mysoreans.
Mysore for Mysoreans. That's what I'm told in those days. My grandfather and people do talk about those days in their time. Now, it is the Telugus who wanted another state. Potti Sriramulu went on that fast to death and he got that state. And I sincerely believe that Tamil Nadu defaulted into becoming a linguistic state. We write that in the book also. Because all the non-Tamil speakers had left by then. But the Andhras had gone. At the time of independence, Madras was 50% Telugu speaking.
But even today, many of the Tamil Nadu politicians speak Telugu at home.
They do. One of the chief ministers was Malayali, one was a Mysorean, and one was a, Telugu. Karunanidhi's original family, they are all Telugu speaking people. So, see, this whole idea of language has become a jingoistic thing for the politicians. And it is a false identity. This is what we have stated stringently. It is one of the, in fact, Ambedkar called it the most unfortunate thing that we are doing by putting linguistic states. I think the time for linguistic states also is now over. I think I'll be frank, poor people cling to language because they have nothing, no other form of identity. And people need some identity. So suppose you are moderately rich. Suppose India becomes to a level of 6 trillion, 7 trillion economy.
Mm-hmm.
Most of this talk of language will vanish. It's a matter of whom you can do better economics and commerce and trade and make a money and make a living. You will not care anymore what language they speak. Many people in Bangalore, as you know, we are all trilingual in 3 South Indian languages. There's nothing. What is the great thing about it? Telugulo matladachu, easy. Tamil la pesana. I don't think it's very difficult. And one should not make a big humbug out of it. And far from claiming an identity. When I've grown up in 5-6 states in this country, and really I feel in many ways I grew up in Bombay. I think I'm feeling pan-Indian. People ask me what's your native place. It's sometimes difficult to answer.
Professor, I actually want to bring up one topic, which is before I go to one of my penultimate questions. One of the things that you said is 888 seats is what the...
888 is the number I've heard.
Yeah.
Is the number of seats in that new Lok Sabha.
No, Lok Sabha. Just from a pure arithmetic perspective, when we have the Muslim veto, we talk about that. And that's with approximately, say, 17% of the population. We don't know, maybe 20%, maybe 17%.
Probably 17, I think.
Okay, that's the thing. Now, the 17% doesn't express itself in our first past post system as 17% veto, because in the first past post system, it's sometimes weakened out. Now, when you distribute this into double the roughly double the number of seats, that becomes more proportional.
It becomes
More proportional to the actual representation of the underlying population. And if you had 10,000 seats, for example, we would have a more accurate proportional representation of the population, perhaps. This is the thing that causes worry, because should we necessarily have, when the delimitation happens, smaller MP seats, or should we have larger MP seats? Should we have more bigger MPs seats?
definitely, I believe the seats should be smaller. Firstly, because in the Bharat book, with my 75 states, I think there are only 4 states with Muslim majority. One is Kashmir, one is what we call Hastinapur, which is the area around Meerut,
West UP.
westernmost parts of UP. One is what we call Kamtapur, which is near that Chicken's Neck. And the 4th is Malabar. Now, when you have a state with just 2 crore population, each of these populations is only, because our population today is about 150 crores, if you say. 75 state means on an average 2 crore population.
2 crores each.
We have tried to stick to that number, and in fact, in the delimitation book, we have got a district by district analysis of the figures of the 2011 census, and we have worked out the population of these 75 states. And the average and the cluster, we have put a normal distribution. It is clustering near 2 crores only. There are a few outliers which are a bit larger and a bit smaller, but it is not as wild as today. Like today, UP and Sikkim, there is a factor difference of some 75 in population, something like that. Whereas in our new scheme, the 2 largest states are called Mithila and Kashi, which have a population of about 6 crores each. So they are really large. Most of the states are 2 crore, 2.1 crore, 1.7 crore, like that.
Would cities like, mega cities like Mumbai become their own state then?
Practically, Mumbai is what we call Konkan, which is Maharashtra is now, I think, Konkan. We have Marathwada. No, we call it Amravati. Marathwada. We have Vidarbha. We have Nashik. And we
Desh.
have
Desh.
I think we have 5 states or so for Maharashtra. So for a long time I was wondering whether we should just make Mumbai a city state, but we put a narrow coastal strip, because I see in the next 50 years that whole Bombay conglomerate will come all the way up down the coast. It will become a super mega city. So that's why we have put Konkan like that. Yeah, Konkan, Nashik, Vidarbha, Marathwada, and near Pune, that area. So, if once you have, like, the population is only 2 crores, I don't think any Muslim majority state will give trouble. And we have also advocated that there must be very serious powers given to the center, independent of the Supreme Court, to bring in repressive law and order measures. And people should be able, the union should be able to use, Article 365 and all that. They should be able to use those things. Right now, the Supreme Court is blocking.
The Bombay judgment.
They're blocking all attempts at putting president's rules. So, center should be given draconian powers with these states. And if necessary, the states even named, or put that Armed Forces Special Act or something in those states. Because let's face it, it is a sort of a group within our country, and we have to learn how to handle these people. Because normally when they get thwarted electorally, their natural tendency is to take to violence. They have shown this again and again in North India. Now, South to Karnataka, we don't see this aspect of the problem. We don't see it like they do in the North. In the North, they are living with this every day. So, it should not become to that level that we are facing violence at every stage. So, Armed Forces Special Protection Act, it may become necessary. People have asked me, what will we do? The same question is posed to me, including by people in politics. Your scheme is okay, but we are going to get Muslim enclaves. I said, first thing is they are small. Second, the center can deny them financial things. Center has got a lot of powers in our country. They are all hidden powers. And the Constitution coolly says that anything that is not mentioned in the Constitution belongs to the Union of India, not to the states.
Fair enough.
States have hardly any independence in our thing. So further, if you make it equal, then each state's same heft will work. In fact, I convinced my publisher because he wanted to know in one sentence. We met in a hotel lobby and I said, hey, this is my idea. And then he said, give me an example. I said, today Tamil Nadu is accusing UP of high-handed behavior and the fact that they are got more authority with the center compared to Tamil Nadu, although we are highly industrialized and all out here. They are doing nothing. So then I said, yes. We've talked a little bit about smaller states and bigger states. I can recollect an incident with my publisher. The deal was agreed to very informally. So I said, I've got this idea for this book about delimitation and all that. And the fact that delimitation only is meaningful if you do it with redrawing of the state boundaries themselves. So he said, what's the example? I said, today we are in a situation where Tamil Nadu is accusing UP of high-handed behavior. And although they seem to be doing better in many ways, the center favors UP and it doesn't favor them. I said, that's because the population size of Tamil Nadu and UP is so different. I said, suppose you have two states of equal size. And I said, we'll have a state called Awadh, which is in the region of Lucknow. And then we have a state called Kongu, which is in the region of Coimbatore. Both of them, according to our population figures, have about 2 crore population. I said, tomorrow, Kongu will never accuse Awadh of bullying and high-handed behavior.
They have equal leverage.
So the man put his hand out and he said, you've got a book. So our deal to write this book was just decided on this example. So the power of having states of equal size. And the other thing, Venkatesh, I think Jefferson has said this about democracy and all. All people can't have their way on all things. You cannot go on saying Kannada, Kannada, Kannada till the end of your life. What else do you have to show for yourself? You have Bangalore where all the people are just doing back office work for American companies. All the so-called South Bangalore and this Manyata and all that. Where is the local thing coming from? Yellinda barta ide? Zero. Have we done something after Vishweshwaraya in this state? Something that has affected the lives of millions for generation after generation. What about Krishnaraj Vadiyar? Do we have any political leader of that caliber? What about his mother, who donated the 393 acres of land where my institute stands today in a 5-minute discussion? Yen kelita idare? Oh, they want some land alli. Sari kottubidi. That's all. The whole thing was over and done with. Today, after more than 100 years, the political acumen showed by that young lady who was widowed at the age of 28. Atara yellidare, sir. We talk about all this Kannada, Kannada, Kannada. What have they done with this after 75 years? Can you name even a few people of that caliber I have talked about? And how much that they have done things that have benefited the state even today. I think we have to give up. Please buy the book, read the chapter on linguistic states. It's an abomination that must go. And you talk to the Tulus, you ask them about Kannada. Why was that movie Kantara so popular? It showed an aspect of regionalism which people feel very strong. Micro-identities are important because micro-identities, in a micro-identity you can capture the macro-identity of being a Bharatiya. It doesn't come into conflict, neither the micro-identity of Kantara or the macro-identity of a Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose come into conflict with each other. The concept of a linguistic state comes directly in contradiction to that because it separates Indian from Indian. A Bengali should be able to feel free to come to Bangalore and work here as much as I should feel free to go to Calcutta and work there. I think this is, the kind of thing which we should look forward to. Instead of going and saying we are all Indians in America, we should say that we feel like Indians in India. I think this is the lesson that I hope that the 50-year tragedy of delimitation freezing is done away with, but it will be meaningless unless we reorganize states. Otherwise, this problem will not go away, the so-called North-South divide, which, by the way, Ambedkar had predicted in 1955. He said, if you have all these states the way you have got them now, he told Panigar, you will get this terrible North-South divide after some time. Exactly, it is what has happened.
So, now I'll probably come to the final question of the day. Can you paint us the big picture of, let's say, what, if your recommendations were accepted, the future of Indian Parliament will look like, say, in 2026, 2030, or whenever the big delimitation happens?
It's a very good question, and part of it I have addressed in the Bharat book, and the rest of it we address in the, Mr. Bhattacharya and I will have addressed in the delimitation book. I think given the realities of running a democracy today anywhere in the world, I think we would be well suited to a complete separation of executive and legislature, like what they have in America.
It's a presidential system, governor system.
Governor and president, we elect them. Let us say Modi versus Rahul Gandhi. We have a presidential election. And you see the way Trump appointed all his cabinet members in a few days, subject to Senate and House confirmation.
The political appointees.
They are all political appointees. They come and go with the president. I think one of the biggest advantages of separating legislature and executive in India is that it will reduce corruption drastically in the political class. Because if the same person is legislating and also being a minister, then he has almost complete control over the whole process. The Prime Minister in India is way too powerful, because practically he has all the powers in his hand to make any laws, especially with a majority in the Lok Sabha, which is now in a coalition thing with two coalition partners, but still it is a majority government. So basically this system will lead to a majoritarianism of one political party. Parliamentary democracy in the Westminster system is essentially majoritarian. It is not meant for all. It is only meant for the ruling party. And the correction they have put there is two. Firstly, the power of the executive and the judiciary is very weak in Britain. Only the legislative wing is strong. Parliament is supreme, and it will only work when there is no written constitution. The constitution is what the parliament of that day says it is. Tomorrow, if a new parliament comes and makes something, that becomes a new constitution. So this Westminster system only works with an unwritten constitution. It doesn't work with a written constitution like we have.
So delimitation as an exercise is also going to come with constitutional reform.
It must. It really must. Although, believe me, the redrawing of state boundaries can be done tomorrow morning with Article 3. There is nothing that, by the way, simple majority will do. You don't need special majority. The 2/3 and all you don't
As
need.
demonstrated with
Telangana and
Jammu Kashmir.
Jammu Kashmir, Telangana, the Article 3 is very wide, of wide scope. And that's because they knew those boundaries then were all going to be temporary. Incidentally, I should tell about the constitution. Patel said this constitution is valid only for 10 years. Nehru said this constitution is a work in progress. Both of them were very sanguine about it. I don't think, many of these people, under the circumstances, they were doing the best that they could. They knew that they needed something called constitution, so they wrote this and that. It doesn't mean that it is inscribed in stone today for us to sit and start worshipping. As I said, Asman Kitab. It is not Asman Kitab. It is something that, and therefore it is something we can change completely also. A country like France has changed its constitution completely, many times. Delimitation is something that Germany undertook cheerfully when East and West Germany united. That was a massive exercise in delimitation. So when countries are doing all this, we should not be scared anymore. And the other thing is, if you have an automatic delimitation with equal size states, the consequences are independent of which party is in power in Delhi. So nobody can say BJP has done this, BJP has done that, Congress has done this, Congress has done that. The process will be independent of these political parties. And it will be completely free, and then the way will be open to the two major criteria which we believe in this book. Each vote, same value. Each state, same heft. If you have these two criteria, then you get a better democracy, which is not susceptible to the foibles and caprices of our political class, who have not shown themselves in very good light today. After 75 years, that's the one thing I can say. None of these guys are really that great. The people of India are greater than its politicians. And I feel that with separating this legislature and executive, firstly, corruption will come down, and the legislature can get along with its smooth job of framing the laws.
As they are meant to be.
As they are meant to be. They let the executive do the execution of that job. And they have a beautiful system of the presidential veto. So if the president really feels that is something that he cannot do, he can exercise the veto. The other thing which we call for is that in the Bharat book and also here is that the upper house is actually redundant for us now. We don't need it. And US again has a beautiful system of 2 senators from each state. So whether it is Illinois or Wyoming,
they have
the same representation in the Senate. So this means that a state is given importance because it is a state in the upper house. A state is given importance because of the number of people living in it because of the lower house there. So the state is given importance both for the number of people it has and the fact that it is a state. It is privileged to be a state of the United States of America. So I think that kind of, suppose we have an upper house like that, say 5 members in the upper house from each state. I think every state will feel great. Manipur will be the same as Mizoram, will be the same as Bihar, will be the same as Goa, will be the same as something else.
That's a entirely different picture of.
Yeah, you've got to make people feel that we are part of the show here. And if you have all states having same number in the upper house, where is the question of one state feeling that I am being suppressed by another state?
Thank you very much, Professor. With that, we come to the end of this chat. So we thank you, Professor Desiraju, for such a great exposition of your vision of how India and Bharat should look like after the delimitation exercise. The guiding principles that we talked about today was each vote should be valued the same, and also each state should have the same heft and leverage at the center. And that is when we will have some kind of an inclusive democracy where we will see better governance, better participation of people, and lead to resurgence at a civilizational level, and also deal with such a complex big country as India and its huge problems. We need to have the basics right and go back to having democracy with its core values of equality of vote as a core principle. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you indeed, Venkatesh. It's been a pleasure talking with Sangam.
Please look forward to the professor's new book release in January. And this is going to be very interesting about the delimitation. Thank you. Bye.